You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com. You're listening to the We Are Libertarians network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast. This is episode number 84 of East Central Indiana's favorite podcast. I'm Jeremiah Morrill, and today I'm joined by co-host Dakota Davis.
Today's episode is going to be featuring three candidates for State Senate, District number 26. We have Mike Gaskill, Dave Cravens, and Mr. Greg Noland over here. We're going to be asking them all kinds of questions about their platforms, the issues that are plaguing the state, such as hate crime legislation, county jails across the state, hemp and marijuana legalization, and our education system across the state. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that.
Do want to thank the League of Women Voters as well for participating this evening. Both Wylands Flowers and the League of Women Voters have been kind enough to contribute to the show this evening. Dakota? Today's episode is brought to you by Wylands Flowers of Newcastle. Wylands has been delivering top-of-the-line flowers and gifts to the area since 1951. Wylands provided the flowers for both of our weddings. Great service, incredible flowers, and a hometown landmark business. Wylands is the official florist of the Boss Hog of Liberty.
With online ordering and same-day flower delivery, you guys have no excuse to not buy your loved ones flowers. Call 765-529-6303, or you can visit wylandsflowers.net and take advantage of their service on some amazing autumn gift sets. Tell them the Boss Hog of Liberty sent you. And whenever you get done with that, then hop on over to patreon.com/Boss Hog of Liberty. That is our monthly donation service, and if you enjoy our program, then you can help keep the lights on in this studio and make sure our electric bill gets paid, and we have heat and everything else over here for our guests.
It's a very dark and rainy November evening. We're very happy we've got a roof over our head.
That's right.
We're not nomads. When we first started doing this show, we were back poolside at my house, and we didn't have a roof. So we've got that going for us now.
We've come a long way. And that is all thanks to our Patreon donors, patreon.com/Boss Hog of Liberty. And if you're watching the video right now, we have got an amazing table that allows us to seat 5 different people. And we have the amazing Kevin Potter and Elizabeth Potter to thank for that. You can go find our Amazon wish list, search Boss Hog of Liberty on Amazon, and that's how you can get a piece of equipment named after you. So we have the Potter table in here tonight, and the Craig DaCosta headphones, and
all I had to
tiles.
do was marry their daughter, and they sent a table. It worked out okay.
It was great. It was a pretty good trade, I think. It worked out well for me anyway.
Yeah, no commitment for you. All right, so
let's get to the hard-hitting questions here.
We have been following this Senate race for a little while. Henry County is where our show originates from, and we have one state representative, but 2 state senators represent our area. The northern third of Henry County is represented by currently State Senator Doug Eckerty, and this district covers portions of Delaware County, portions of Henry County, and portions of Madison County. Is that correct?
Yes.
So these 3 gentlemen have been traveling the district since probably last fall, if not spring at the latest. Going around talking to people. I've run across them all on the campaign trail as I've had my own race. So it's an open Senate seat. I just for my own entertainment, I went and I pulled the campaign finance reports, and I said, "Oh my God, these guys have raised and spent a lot of money. You've been working, Mike. You guys have." It's serious business running for state senate.
It certainly is.
So on my right, we do have Mike Gaskill, who's from Pendleton, Indiana. That's correct?
That's right.
All right. And do you want to spend just a few minutes telling us about yourself, your bio, what made you run, what makes you want to run for the state senate, and go through this process?
Okay, sure. Again, my name is Mike Gaskill, and I'm an insurance agent in Anderson. 25 years in the business. Kind of thrilled to be able to share an office with my father, who is the most senior agent in Indiana for our company. And 2 of my 3 children work for me, adult children, and 2 of their spouses. So it's a family business through and through. Graduated from Pendleton Heights High School, went to Anderson University, graduated with honors in 3.5 years, 2 majors, accounting and computer science. Before I graduated college, I married my high school sweetheart and had bought 2 houses, and I paid for my own college. So I'm got the work ethic, to get things done, and I think I have the temperament to be a senator. I know how to bring people together. I know how to, so often we see people that when they get into politics, they either have a linguini spine and no courage, or they're so firm and rigid that they don't listen to anybody. And so I get a real thrill out of making new friends along campaign trails. I've been a school board member, a county councilman. One particular story that I really enjoy sharing is I'm out looking for sign locations and my county council campaign, and there was a Democrat that led me to one of his friends, and he said, this guy will support some Republicans, and I think he knows me. He dropped my name, so I go into his shop, and I'm 6'3". I'm a pretty tall guy. And I'm looking at this guy's chin, and he's got arms as big as a tree trunk. And so I said, I thought, my friend mentioned his name. He said, might be able to help me with some yard sign location. He said, well, you heard wrong, And he says, I don't approve at all of what you're doing on that county council, but he really laid me out.
He knew what was going on. He just didn't like you.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, long story short, I said, well, hey, look, this is your place of business. I'm happy to leave if you want me to. But I'd be happy to stay and listen to your criticisms of me and see what I can learn. So he went in and let him completely unwind, and he had been given a lot of false information. And I shared with him what was really going on. And he looked at me and said, well, you've got to get that message out. He said, listen, I got friends that come up here for donuts on Thursday mornings. I want you to come and talk to them, and I'll get you a sign location here, and I'll get you one of my sisters. And anyway, I share that story just to let folks know that I know how to listen, I know how to take criticism, and I enjoy making friends with people that may not be a supporter to start off.
All right. Let's hear from Dave Cravens.
Well, thank you, everybody from Henry County, to give me this opportunity to speak to you. Henry County has a special place in my heart. My wife's family lives in Sulphur Springs. Me and my wife met in Newcastle, lived right here on Broad Street in a one-bedroom apartment with a fold-down futon for several years. I'm part of Henry County. I'm part of the hardworking middle class, just like Henry County. I've worked for the United Food and Worker Commercial Union in a meat packing plant. I've worked for the Carpenters Union. I've worked for the Teamsters Union. I'm a professional firefighter. I'm part of the Firefighters Union. My tenure as an executive for Coca-Cola, I was in charge of business plan and strategy. One of my most notable projects was the Coca-Cola NASCAR team. Spent many years there. Started my first business in 1993 with $10,000 in a credit card, and grew to a chain of nutrition stores. Over the last decade, I've developed several commercial real estate properties. But my most honorable job for the citizens and taxpayers of the community is serving as fire chief. I know as fire chief, I got to provide payroll, equipment, services to the community, and make no excuses, and be prepared when people call 911. If I'm blessed and if I'm elected, I will work on things in Henry County and be here and be part of Henry County and be noticeable and work on our schools, our roads, not raise taxes, our infrastructure and job creation, our broadband, and bring good working middle class jobs back to our community and be accountable for Henry County and be visible. I think that if you're a senator, you should be transparent, you should be accessible to your people. I believe that we should have an advocate office in each of our 3 counties that we represent, that if it's only open at least one day a week, be an extension of our people. people want to see your senators and your representative. That's what they pay tax dollars for. So if I'm blessed, I will work on those issues and be accountable and make other people accountable for their actions at State House also. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I thank you for the opportunity to be able to run for office. It's been a unique experience. And thank you so much. I will work hard for you so you guys can work hard again. Thank you.
All right. And Greg Noland.
Hey, I'm real excited to be here in Henry County. In 1971, I was the presiding officer of the Order of Demolay in Anderson. And they asked our organization to come and establish the Order of Demolay here in Newcastle. And we were really excited to do it. I think there were 52 young men that we took in that day. And it was really exciting. So I'm happy to be back here. Again, my name's Greg Noland. I'm married to Reverend Ann, and yes, I am a preacher's husband. And we've been blessed with 4 children, and they're all married. They all own their own homes. They all graduated from college. Most of them have postgraduate degrees, so we're just proud of punches of them. They've all blessed us with grandchildren, so we live a very blessed life. I went to General Motors Institute, which is now called Kettering University. It's probably one of the hardest colleges to graduate from in the country. Requires 180 credits to graduate, and you have to write a thesis, like a master's thesis. So, I'm really proud of that. Just getting through that sheepskin.
Yeah.
I'm a former plant superintendent of Fort Wayne Foundry. Also worked in advanced engineering for Delphi, and I'm currently a senior engineer for Ford Meter Box in Wabash. I'm active in my church and held lots of offices and stuff, deacon and all those things. I'm currently on the ruling elder right now. I enjoy working with youth. I told you I was the Demolay experience when I was younger, and so for the last 40-some years, I've been an advisor for the Order of Demolay in Anderson, and at one point, one year, I was nominated and received Indiana Advisor of the Year for that organization. So that was a great honor to do that. So why I ran? I want to help people. You know, I've been sitting back and seeing the laws in Indiana, and they're passing so many of them, and so many of them aren't making sense, and they're hurting people. And I think with my manufacturing and management and engineering experience, that I can help bring some common sense to the laws in Indiana, and so that they'll stop hurting people. Laws that make sense, laws that solve problems, and that's why I'm running for office.
All right, and I guess I wanted the number one reason for Dave and Mike as well. Your number one motivating factor to run for the state senate. What's your number one driving issue that said, hey, you know what, this is the year I'm going to run?
Well, I think I serve my community well, but I think I could be a better advocate for my community and have better policies for the state.
All right, and Mike.
I've been a good friend of Doug Eckerty's for a long time, and helped in some of his campaigns in the past. And I told Doug, I'm happy to have you as my state senator, but if you ever think that you might retire, let me know, because I'd like to take a stab at it. And he thought he'd probably go 3 terms or so, and then decided that he'd go 2 instead. So I had to get ready a little earlier.
It was a surprise.
It was a surprise, yeah. But I want to make sure that we continue to move Indiana forward, create more jobs, put a low tax environment, low regulation environment where businesses can thrive. And I want people to make more money. I want there to be so many employment opportunities out there that the employers have trouble finding people to fill them.
All right. Well, that's honestly in Delaware County now, the employer I'm at, that wages are going up. It's been this, if you can find somebody that can pass a drug test and can show up to work on time, you pretty well can have a job. But it's in the manufacturing side, it is a struggle. We had a job fair this last summer and had probably 25 or 30 people come through, and we had, I think at this point now in November, 0 of those people are working for us because they just couldn't couldn't make it work. Anyway, all right. Well,
Yeah, and let's move on to some of our questions and the issues. I guess the first thing that I had on here was that back in July there was some anti-Semitic graffiti that showed up, and in Carmel at a synagogue. It was a giant swastika on this synagogue's dumpster, on the walls surrounding their dumpster. Seems like right after that, Governor Eric Holcomb came out, and some other state legislators came out and said that we, as a state, need to catch up to the times, is what they said, and introduce some hate crime legislation, some hate crime laws to more harshly punish these folks. My first question is that Indiana being one of 5 states that doesn't have hate crime legislation, is that something that you would support? We'll start with you, Mike.
Am I going to start first every time?
No.
Or just,
So the interesting format about this show is we're conversational. So we're not going to have a clock. We're going to make sure everybody gets enough time to talk. The order, if you want to pass, and then you can start with Greg. That's fine.
I'm happy to.
I go first.
I'm happy to weigh in on it. But it's not something that has been on my radar. I'm not sure that it makes anybody's life better. But if I'm elected and there's legislation introduced, then I'm going to look at it carefully, weigh it out, see exactly what it says, because sometimes the devil is in the details. You can talk about a particular topic and we need this legislation or that legislation, and then when you see the actual language, it can either be good or be bad. And I think legislation is kind of like medicine, as you heard me say in Middletown a week or two ago, that there's side effects, and you have to decide, is the problem that this is going to fix, does that outweigh what the side effects are? So I'd have to see it. But generally speaking, I think there's already laws on the books that make things like that illegal. Yep. Even federal laws that are probably stiffer than a lot of state penalties.
Let's hear from Greg.
I agree a lot with Mike, what Mike's saying there, and I've been saying this for some time. Some of my worries is that the language could be in such a way that it could reverse itself on a lot of the minority groups that we are actually trying to protect with this legislation, and instead of people that are being targeted, like you've got here with this synagogue in Carmel. That you'll end up with a minority person that says something whitey or cracker or something like that, and then they're going to be,
and then they're punished under the full extent of hate crime legislation.
Yes, right. And so I have concerns about that. So I, like Mike, I would have to read this legislation very closely and make sure that kind of thing wouldn't be flipping. I was reading the other day in North Carolina. A bunch of minorities tore down a statue of Robert E. Lee. Well, that could be considered a hate crime, and those kids could be punished, far beyond what, I think would be logical in that particular case. So we just have to watch and be careful.
All right. And Dave?
Sure. I think that we should have some type of hate crime. I think that we should have social equality in and outside the workplace. But I also think people should be judged on merit, not race, color, or gender. But as these guys have said, the legislation has to be correct, has to be right, because what they're trying to do in some cases is take a level 5 felon to a level 4 felon, and you could have one person commit the same crime and each person be charged differently. And so with the proper legislation to where they're not treating people differently with the same crime, I think it's a good thing. Anytime we can increase the quality of our state, we're not an attractive state. We're 48th quality of life, and I think we got to make our state more attractive. And we're only 5 states. There are a lot of federal and local laws, but a lot of them are tied up in brick and mortar. And just like our tax codes, we need to simplify those so we can get more government projects done.
So you're listening to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast on the We Are Libertarians Network. We have Mike Gaskill, Greg Noland, and Dave Dave Cravens. I almost said Dave Ring. You beat Dave Ring already. Dave was on with us in the spring, and we're talking about the state senate district. Is it 26? Is that
Yes.
correct? State Senate District 26 race. Dave mentioned jails and the level of facilities, level 4, level 5s. In my race for county council, I've really had this jail issue come to me in a county level race because there were some changes to criminal justice codes that said, hey, level 6s are going to stay at the county level now. A couple of years ago, I guess it was this year, House Bill 1263 was signed into law, which said that the counties, to try to deal with this overcrowding that's come from the level 6s, they said, hey, we can raise the local income taxes in the counties. I guess I want to know from each of you, is that this type of solution that you want to see for the counties? Do you want? Randy Fry is introducing a bill here in a couple weeks. He's announced it, but I guess it'll come in January. Assuming Randy gets to go back, that would deal with a regional jail model. Inside of your district here, Henry County and Delaware County are both actively in jail projects, and I apologize, I don't know about Madison County, if Madison County is okay or if they're fighting it, but I know Hancock is as well.
All 3 counties are in the same position.
We're
Yeah.
overcounted.
So they're all struggling with this. And Mike, you've served on a county council, so you're coming from both sides of this, I'm sure. And your bride is getting ready to be a county commissioner potentially. So you really, there's all these different factors here. I guess I want your feel for the relationship between the states and the counties with these jails and what the proper solution is. Because at least when I got into this race as a county council candidate, it really wasn't being talked about, and it was a county by county issue. And the more I've looked at it, I've said, man, this is happening in about 80 counties across the state. So now's the time to have this conversation. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with Dave.
Sure. Well, this problem started many years ago, and it's actually started with the Justice Reinvestment Plan, and it's House Bill 10,006, and that was under Mitch Daniels. And what they did, they tried to take a level 6 felon and not put them in the Department of Corrections, to put them in local jails. Then all of a sudden, within 18 months, 80% of all your jails had overcrowding, and so that's where it started now, but without any funding, and so.
So Daniels declassified or reclassified, which has filled the local jails. The solution was Bill 1263, which was to allow the counties to raise taxes so that they can increase. Just for clarification, so they can create more capacity.
And on your House Bill 1263, they imposed an ordinance to impose a fee of a 0.25% tax, and to build a regional jail. And there's, how will they fund that? 2, how many miles are you going to take a police officer out of that area, out of that county, to drive to be incarcerated? And if you think about it, so you're going to take those level 6, so you're not going to send them to the Department of Correction, you're not going to send them to local county jails, so you're creating another jail. Who's funding and who's paying for that? And then you got to buy land. You got infrastructure costs of steel versus adding on the buildings. So there's a lot of information. I know Mr. Fry, he's a retired firefighter. On the floor. I've read the whole bill today. And so they need to do something. But this problem has eroded roots for almost 10 years now, and they've not done anything properly to fund it or fix the problems. And one of the things I think they need to do is have better, there used to be a thing called jail chemical and addiction programs. And they were supposed to do that to keep people out of jail, out of being incarcerated, and out of prison. And the money was supposed to come back to local municipalities for Delaware County, Madison County, and Henry County. And it's called JCAP. And they use it I think, Dearborn County. And they're not using that program effectively. And so they keep dumping on the small municipalities and counties and stuff. And but we got to have proper funding. And our drug problem is spilled over into our streets and stuff. We got to get the drugs off the streets. We got to get these people help and quit the overcrowding of the jails. I would, as a state senator, I would definitely pass a bill that would give extra funding there. It depends on how the money and how the budget was going to go, because I'm not for raising taxes. But it'd have to be the proper legislation, because, again, we're saving money. When they originally did this bill, 1006, it was saving money for the Department of Corrections. But all they did was dump all the money and the funding on local county jails.
The burden went to the counties at that point.
Exactly.
All right, let's hear from Greg.
That's exactly right, Dave. I mean, the state caused this problem upon almost all the counties in Indiana. There's some that had just built new jails that are in good shape right now. They're actually making money in some of those counties by
other counties basically renting space.
That's exactly
to send
right.
inmates.
So it's just created a mess, and then you've got the people that are relatives and wives and husbands of these people that are incarcerated now. They got to travel over the state to see their loved ones. So it just created a terrible mess here. The state did. Again, I talked earlier that the state causes all these problems. They don't think about the end game on a lot of this stuff, and this is a problem that is caused in every county in the state. I think Representative Fries is attempting to make some kind of halfway resolution to this problem with this legislation, as I read it. As a libertarian, I think we've got way too many people in jails anyway. We need to be looking at some of our drug laws, especially we'll talk about it here later on about marijuana. But 3/4 of our people in our prison are there for drugs or drug-related problems. I mean, so we need to look at reducing our people that are in jail. I mean, America's supposed to be the land of the free. And we have 5% of the world's population, yet we have 25% of the world's people incarcerated. So we incarcerate way too many people for a country that's supposed to be free. So I think we need to be, instead of spending money on jails, we need to be spending money on getting people out of prisons and not criminalizing everybody. So that would be how I would try to talk to the Senate in terms of solving this problem.
All right, Mike Gaskill.
Yeah, we've had overcrowding problems in our jail, and I've dealt with it as a county councilman. One of the things that we found was contributing to that is out of our 6 courts, 1 court was responsible for 1/3 of the jail population. And we had almost 100 inmates that were, if they had $500 and could bail themselves out, they would have been out awaiting trial.
Yep.
And so, you've got to look at creative solutions, and you've got to have everybody coming to the table and contributing. And since some of the different county officials in Madison County brought that to light, that particular court has done a much better job of moving cases through.
So were those... Henry County's talked about bringing an expediter in to kind of be an advocate for people that are in the system. What did they do specifically? Did the judge make some changes, or did they change the bail process? What was the key to reducing the population?
There was an ordinance in place in the county that allowed certain offenders, low-level offenders, to be released on their own recognizance if they met certain criteria. And so that was one of the tools that they used, but they kind of attacked it from several different angles.
So what do you see as the state's role in this? The Randy Fry model, or?
Well, I think regional jails, making another option out there for counties to use is good. You probably wouldn't want to necessarily dictate that, but to me, I think you get some economies of scale if 3 counties were able to share the expenses of one jail. Obviously, you're going to have some cost savings. You might have some transportation issues and other things to look at. But I think when the state legislature gives more options to local government, that's a good thing. Yeah.
All right, Dakota.
Yeah, you're going to ask me about this?
No.
What do I think the state's role
I'll
is?
pass the baton to you. I could talk about jails. This has become my project. I've been learning about this, and it's been...
Yeah, it has been really interesting to see, and our sheriff's department here does well with the resources that they have available to them. Our county council and commissioners also do a good job of trying to implement programs, but it at the same time, it seems kind of like their hands are tied. And I really do. All of you guys had really good answers to that question, in my opinion. Going off of what Greg was talking about, we're going to move on to marijuana and hemp legalization.
Dave's flagging, so we're
oh, okay.
I just think that one of the key things, besides getting the drugs off the streets, having more resources and rehab places for our families to get those helps and get off the streets and keep them out of the jails, which will cut down some of the crowding of the jails and at the state level and at local levels. And we don't have enough resources. They treat it like it's a fire and police problem, and it's more than a fire and police problem, and it keeps going on, and it's growing, and it's festering.
What in my time running for the council seat, I almost view it as levels or stages of the amount of time you need to spend in a county jail. If you're awaiting sentencing or if you're awaiting trial, then yeah, it makes sense to be close to the courthouse. But once you have been sentenced or you're going to be in the facility for 6 months or a year and a half, at that point, the regional jail model makes sense to me. Or going back and having a relationship with the Department of Corrections where the people just go to the state facility and that there are beds waiting there. It's a horror story from the county level of Vigo County's got a federal lawsuit, Henry County's looking at a federal lawsuit. You've got guys that are sleeping not in jail cells, but they're sleeping on the floor, or they're sleeping
in cots that are lining the walls.
And they're on the they're in debrief rooms. I mean, that aren't even 6 feet across. I
think society incredible. Is changing as well, and I think that's contributing to our overcrowding problem. Is that it's not the same world that we grew up in. You guys look a little bit younger than us, but Dave and Greg and I have all known each other for years before we got into this contest, and have lived in the same community, and I think they would probably agree that it's not the same. We have more crime, and I think drugs. One area where I might differ a little bit with Greg is that I think that drugs are a lot of the problem. I think it's a lot of problem. The theft that we see in our communities, a lot of the other crime is the result of drug abuse. And with a close family member that's a police officer and worked in drug enforcement, he's told me several stories about people coming up to him out in the public when he's off duty and thanking him for sending them to prison because they would have never gotten off drugs if they hadn't done some time in prison. So, it's bad for somebody to be in prison. It's a disappointing thing, but sometimes it's the only way to help someone.
All right, yeah, so going off of that, with marijuana and hemp legalization, you talked on it a little bit, so we're going to start with you, Greg. Okay. Would you support the legalization of hemp? And also, House Bill number 1137 it sought to legalize hemp in the state of Indiana. It passed through the House with flying colors, but it hit a roadblock in the Senate whenever Governor Holcomb mentioned that he had some objections. Yep. So I guess at one point, do you support legalization, medical or recreational? And also, would you have voted to approve hemp if that had been you in the Senate?
Yes. Well, and this is one of my big campaign issues that I'm working on this year is the legalization, especially of medical marijuana. I've been in contact with veterans for the legalization of cannabis. And they have been working with the veterans organizations throughout the state of Indiana. And all of these veteran organizations have written petitions to the state legislature and to the governor requesting that medical marijuana be legalized. So the veterans are all behind the legalization of medical marijuana. And I think it's a horror. And it just failed a study committee to come out of a study committee here recently, and it's just horrible that these veterans of ours that have PTSD and these kind of ailments that are not going to be able to avail themselves to medical cannabis coming up, and going forward, with the legalization of recreational marijuana. I mean, I told you, I've got backgrounds in masonry and I'm very active in my church and stuff like that. And, these guys have talked about we need to get drugs off the streets, Well, I'm tired of it. I mean, for 50 years now, I've been hearing the war on drugs, and we're losing the war on drugs, and it just doesn't make any sense anymore. I mean, our great-grandparents, when we had problems with alcohol, realized that it was causing corruption and theft and all these terrible things to our society, and they said, let's get this stuff off the street and get it inside of drugstores where we can keep it away from our young people, because they'll have to go into the drugstore and say, young man, let me see your ID, And I think if we're going to stop it at all, or if we're going to get our arms around it, we've got to get it to where it's legalized so we can regulate it, keep it away from young people, take the criminality out of it. Because, people are shooting people up for bad drug deals all the time. In Anderson especially, it's very bad right now with all these drug deals going bad. A number of people have been shot and killed because of these drug deals. If it was in a drugstore, those people would be still alive, And it's just horrendous.
Let's hear from Dave on the issue.
Okay.
Sure. I'm for supporting legalized marijuana. I do a support group with the fire department with post-traumatic syndrome, and my dad's a retired, not retired, but
support medical or recreational or all of the above. What?
Well, a support group for post-traumatic syndrome.
Okay.
And I would support the legalization of medical marijuana. My dad's a ex-Vietnam vet, Agent Orange cancer survivor, and I know a lot of vets. And I think that it's time to that it should be accessible to them. And I think if we could legalize it with proper legislation and actually use the revenues for drug rehab centers, resources to get people off the other drugs, if it's utilized that way, I think that would be something that I would definitely consider and go in with eyes wide open. And would I vote to approve the hemp if I was on the Senate? Yes. So what? When Curtis Hill banned that, had all these kids that was on this seizure list.
That was CBD, CBD, right?
Yeah, and it was a knee-jerk reaction, and then it took them 3 or 4 months, and then they approved it. It was 0.3%, and I just think we need to have the proper legislation and do things in the right way, and good government is good governance, and I'd go in with eyes wide open.
All right. On the recreational side, I know that Pendleton, I think just this week, their town council said no. They were, I guess they had a statement against any recreational marijuana in the future. Do you have a view on that side as well, or just for now you're medicinal only?
Yeah, I didn't hear that or see that, so I don't know much about what the statement was.
Okay.
So.
But recreational, yes, no?
Recreational, if it was legalized with a proper legislation and the money could be used for resources for get people off the opioids and other drugs, yes. I would definitely go in with eyes wide open with a proper legislation. Okay. All right. And Mike. I guess it's a menu. I figured this out. That this is a 3-part question, so I'll let you talk about the whole list. Well, I know it's a core Republican issue.
Well, I'll tell you guys, when you become a legislator, you're going to see a variety of topics that legislation will be about, and there's bound to be many that you're either not an expert in or know very little about. And this is one that I know about zero. Hey, I'm a big nerd. I don't even drink. I don't know about you guys. I've never used any illegal drugs in my life. I never smoked marijuana. Don't know anything about it. Don't either. If I win and take this seat, more than likely, something along this line is going to find its way to the floor. As long as Jim Lucas is still in. yeah, and I know Jim, and
yeah, I mean it's in the summer study committee. It's not this. This isn't a theoretical question. It seems like it's coming down the pike in this next term.
So it would be what I want to share with you is my philosophy. Basically, number one, you should do no harm. Number two, if you have legislation on a topic that you don't know much about, you're going to have to educate yourself. And you're going to have to make sure that you talk to people that on both sides of an issue and get a complete view of all sides. And so I would be very, very leery about recreational marijuana. I think, you know, if you've got young children, are you going to be a good parent? If you've been smoking up, you know, and are you going to take proper care of your kids? In states where, I mentioned to you before the show that I'm an insurance agent, in states where marijuana has been legalized, the number of traffic accidents have increased. There's some pretty sobering statistics, if I could use that word. So, you know, do you look at employment opportunities? If recreational marijuana becomes legal, then, you know, are you going to, that doesn't necessarily mean that employers have to hire people that test positive for drugs.
It's a voluntary association, right? Just, you know, even if the state said, no, we're not going to allow this, you know, General Motors is obviously a big employer in this area at one time. General Motors could still have a policy that says, well, if you can't pass this test or these are expectations we have of you, then you're not going to have a relationship with us. Right. You know, so even if the state got out of the way, there are still other barriers of employment.
Right. So generally speaking, you know, one area where I kind of am with the Libertarians, that generally speaking, I want to see freedom and liberty. I'm a constitutionalist. And I think you ought to be free to pursue happiness in your own way, as long as you're not infringing on somebody else's freedom or liberty. And you know, this is an issue that I'm just not going to stake out a position one way or the other right now until I learn more about it. But I will say this: if you're a voter that this is your number one issue, then I think Greg Noland is your candidate.
All right, and then the industrial hemp on the ag side.
I'll just be honest about
I'll
it.
take
that. So,
the industrial hemp.
Yeah, that's another area. I've done some research on that in preparing for the show, and it appears that there are some valuable industrial uses for hemp, and with the proper controls. One of the things that I've, in my research that I learned that they were concerned about is that if something like that were allowed, that there would need to be a permit process and GPS coordinates on the field, you know, and no marijuana, you know, grown in that field. So, yeah, I would look at that.
Yeah, we had a really interesting episode about a month ago, Dakota, with Danya Lester, who came in, and she was speaking about Purdue University and the School of Ag and the hemp farms that they have there. And basically the big issue that they have is that the state seed commissioner, the reason Indiana is kind of this bottleneck is the federal government has their prohibition on it, and then it feeds back to the state seed commissioner, who is on staff at Purdue by statute. That we don't elect an agriculture secretary in Indiana. It goes back to a university employee, and they're fearful of losing federal costs. So I think that's one of the major bottlenecks we have in Indiana right now. And
that was something that we heard from our own state senator, Jean Lysing. Whenever we asked her, we didn't have her on the show, but asked her personally about the industrial hemp, and she had mentioned that, but I didn't know. And I really think if you're interested in learning more about how like the industrial hemp works and the process that it would have to go through in Indiana, then listen to Danya Lester, because that was totally eye-opening for me. I had no idea. I really do. I don't know. I think that it's coming down the pipeline a lot sooner than what anybody really is anticipating right now.
It's already been legalized in Canada.
Nationwide,
and I just read an article where in Mexico the Supreme Court has declared that they can't across the board declare marijuana illegal. So on both sides of our border, we may have, you know, availability.
It's almost like Indiana. So we're practically surrounded.
You know?
Let's pivot. Let's pivot to education. That's the last major topic that we had advertised on the show this evening. And it's definitely one as we've all been attending these candidate forums this fall, and a lot of times we get paired with the school boards, and we hear the same issues. We hear that, you know, schools will hire a teacher, but they can't keep a teacher. The teacher salaries are dropping. You know, they're losing students. Money's following students, and they're struggling with old footprints that don't have the head count they used to, especially in this part of the state. We'll start with Mike and just the state's role in public education and some of these rural school districts particularly. Blue River would be in your district, and that's one that's really struggled with lower enrollment and potentially has had talks of combining with other districts. What do you see as the future for public education in Indiana?
I think it's going to have to prepare students for the jobs of today and tomorrow, not the world that I and these fellows grew up in. I think it's gotten behind. So, and let me just briefly say, when it comes to teacher salaries, that's a school board issue. It's not. I don't think we want the state legislature determining what teacher salaries are. That the school boards set those salaries, and they should have the flexibility to do what makes sense for their district. I've visited Blue River, and the ag students had a breakfast, and I was really impressed with their agriculture program at Blue River. And
we have two absolutely great for FFA programs in your district in Henry County, both Shenandoah and Blue River.
Right. So, but probably the biggest issue that I have with education is that we gear too much of our resources towards just the students that are going to college. And we need plumbers, welders, carpenters, et cetera, et cetera. And when I was on the school board in Pendleton, South Madison schools, when the budget got tight, that was the first area that some of the board members and the superintendent at the time wanted to cut. And, when they decided to close the auto mechanics program, I was outvoted 6-1 on that. So what I would like to see is a re-emphasis on skilled trades, technical occupations, and we spend a lot of money on education. We need to channel a little bit more of that towards students going into skilled trades and technical positions. And local school boards may have to start taking a different approach. Instead of treating everybody the same, per a union contract. You may have to come to the realization that, my chemistry teacher might have to be paid a little higher salary in order to keep him going to Eli Lilly, or my high-level math instructors may have to be paid a little bit higher salary than some of the other disciplines in order to keep him from, going into engineering or manufacturing. So,
and I'm glad you brought up the skilled trades and those things. Here in Henry County, we have our students here have the opportunity to take advantage of the Newcastle Career Center, and it is. I went through it whenever I was in high school. I didn't know whenever I was a junior and a senior in high school. I had no idea what I wanted to go to college for. I just knew that that's what everybody had been telling me my entire life. And then I went through the building trades program. I'm like, whoa, I really like working with my hands. I should maybe look at this a little bit more. And I start telling everybody, and the school counselor was like, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to go up to the Muncie Electrical Union and get an education there. And they're like, whoa, you can't do that. No, you're too smart to not go to college. And I'm like, well, I just don't know what I want to do, and that's a huge waste of money. But around every single corner and every single person I talked to, it was like I was making the biggest mistake of my entire life. And I think that it's really a good thing.
I agree. We have a career center like that in the district in Elwood, and they're doing phenomenal things up there. Students are actually getting jobs right out of high school running CNC machines, and it was really eye-opening for me because, when I was a student, the industrial arts area is where the guidance counselors sometimes tried to dump the troublemakers. And it shouldn't be that way.
Well, that's what my mom and dad said whenever I told them I wanted to do building trades. They're like, no, that's not for you. I'm like,
you're not a criminal, Dakota.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Dave Cravens on the education issue.
Well, state funding, and I'm going to go back to one of the statements I made in the past is, the property tax caps. And I'm not talking about raising taxes, but one of the things they did, people forget about, they went from 6% sales tax to 7% sales tax to shore up some of that funding. And when communities like Madison County lost $14 million, Delaware lost $13 million, and Henry County lost somewhere between $8 and $9 million. And the problem you get into, especially in Henry County, is that the urban, the suburban, and rural areas, the formulas they use to fund those, some of them get rewarded, some of them don't get as much as they should. So they really don't, the state hasn't really figured out how to properly fund these schools. And with the teachers, they got to quit treating these teachers like a scapegoat. They need to bring back and give them the respect and dignity for an honest, good, honorable career. I think that if we had a proper funding, it wouldn't really be nice to have a really great public schools where you didn't need all these other schools, that our public schools are so good that you didn't need all these schools, but they're not. And we need more innovations in the school. We need a teacher to be treated fair with a fair salary. They're making the same salary they made in 1999. It's not getting it done. I don't believe that we should be cutting funding to public schools. I'm not for or against vouchers. I am concerned about the virtual online schools, that there's not enough legislation on that. Who is teaching these kids online? What diploma? What background do they have? I have concerns with that. But we got to get back to the grassroots. These kids getting these educations are the success of our economy. And we should also have a education program in Indiana. When they go to college, they come out with a $100,000 school loan. And they also should have the skilled trades and stuff. And they broke a lot of the unions that used to offer those skilled trade and apprenticeship jobs. My son went to college for 16 days and cost me $16,000, and I'm still complaining about it. It's just not good. Our school system, we're not making progress in Indiana. You go back 10 years, and our roads aren't increasing, our schools aren't increasing, our public safety is not increasing. So the funding, and I know half the budget from the state goes for school funding, but you got to have the right appropriations in the right area, and this stuff should be budgeted for every single year. I mean, some of these deteriorated jails, same thing. You can't wait till you don't let your house deteriorate where you got a bunch of money into it. This stuff should be a line item budget, and it should be planned and budgeted and appropriate properly, and there should be more transparency. We wouldn't have the lottery money. What happened to the lottery money? Let's go for our schools and roads. What happened to it? What happened to the toll roads for our roads? This stuff is not getting done, and we're not making progress in Indiana, and our kids are paying for it, and so is our teachers. One of the biggest problems at the State House, you had Glenda Ritz, and they didn't like it because she got elected, and at some point they're either going to be appointed or they're going to be elected, and that's going to change legislation here pretty soon.
The superintendent of public instruction seat.
Exactly. Had Glenda Ritz, they wanted to reduce her power, so he made another committee. Now you got Dr. McCormick that is there and elected under the Republicans, and she has to fight with the same committee, and the people who are paying for it are your kids, your teachers, and your schools. And she's not even going to rerun for office before. It's a broken system, and it needs to be fixed, and we need to put our kids first. Our teachers need to be treated with respect and get back to the grassroots. We want Indiana to be a more quality state with hate crimes and everything else and job creations, but we're not doing it, and we're not getting it done. Our kids need to be able to dream again, and it's got to start somewhere.
How do you think that we can retain teachers in the state? My sister is going to college to be an educator, and she got a scholarship whenever she graduated high school, and it was a full ride scholarship as long as she went for elementary education. The only stipulation was that she had to stay in the state of Indiana for 5 years, because the statistics show that a lot of our teachers are quitting their jobs within a 5-year period and going somewhere else. So,
well, I mean, you got classrooms are full of 30 kids, and you go to some of these other schools, there are 15 and 20 kids. The kids can get those attention in school, and then you get a classroom of 30 kids. As teachers, we're not making them feel good about what they're doing, and not getting to spend the time with the kids and learn to appreciate the job that they're doing and know that they're making a difference for those kids. And so, again, they're making the teachers a scapegoat for our school performance. They're using it as a proxy to gain power at the State House. And we need to put more power back into local boards and make sure people who are running for those boards are qualified people, and give them more choices at the local level. We're not getting it done at state level.
All right, Greg, let's hear from you on public schools.
Well, there's not one answer that's going to solve all these. There's a lot of problems. we'll start with retaining teachers is what you've got here on the first thing. I had the opportunity to substitute teach for one semester at Anderson High School, and I got an eyeful and stuff. And some of the things that goes on is that some of the new teachers have low seniority, so they give them the unwanted classes or the one-of-a-kind classes. And I had one teacher, she had 5 different classes. So if you can imagine doing 5 different lesson plans every night, every day, I mean, it's no wonder when they do that to your low seniority teachers that they're running away. So that's one problem that we need to be working on is helping that kind of stuff. The other thing that I've noticed is the old parties are, constitutionally, education is supposed to be nonpartisan. And what I've seen in the last 20 or 30 years is partisanship going into this, and it's hurting our kids. Dave talked a little bit about when Linda Rich was down there and how the Republicans were doing everything to attack them, her and stuff, and starting other committees and stuff like that. That's just ridiculous. I mean, the old parties have got us in this problem, and partisan's not supposed to be part of our education system. We need nonpartisan people running our education system. I think a lot of the problems will start going away that way. We do need to stand up and start funding teachers better. That's a fact. We've not funded them well for a long time. So if you look at people who have similar levels of education, especially in the STEM areas, I mean, as an engineer, a STEM person can make a heck of a lot more money than a teacher can. So if we really want the best people teaching our young people, we're going to have to stand up and
that was one of my questions. I've talked to both of these guys about the stuff that they've said. Indiana spends, I think, right at half or just over half.
About 54% of the budget is on education.
Okay, cool. Thank you. 54% of the budget goes towards education. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of our budget that goes towards education, but we keep having all these issues and teacher pay. What do you think we can do to help get the funding to the schools?
Well, I think we need to. There's a lot of things that we need to do. I mean, Dave talked about the increase in taxes for the school and the lottery for schools. That we had, that was going to. And what happens down in the legislature is they spend that money on something else. One of the things that Rex Bell, who was running for governor a couple of years ago, talked about was that we have all this money that's supposed to be assigned for roads, and you get down to the legislature and they spend the money on other stuff. And then they come back to the public and go, well, your roads aren't any good anymore. We need more money for your roads, even though we spent it on something else. We need more money. So we need to be spending the money on education when we tell them it's going to be spent on education, and same thing with roads. And I think we've done a little bit better in this last legislature on the road part, but we haven't done the same thing with education.
All right. Could I just tack on one thing?
Jump on in there, Mike.
Dave has brought up the tax caps a lot as a problem, but at least as it relates to education, you got to remember, I was a school board member when those were enacted. And at the same time they put the caps on property taxes, they also removed a lot of things out of the school's general fund budget from property tax. And the state put more of it into the per student amount that the schools were getting. So, every year I was on the school board, we saw, more revenue than the previous year. And I've seen the same thing on the county council. Madison County has continued to receive more revenue each year than the year before. And I've signed a pledge that I will not vote for a tax increase. So that's something that people need to know about me. And I disagree that the tax caps are a big problem. The tax caps are a result of local government not behaving, and we've had a history of local government getting out of hand with, and this goes back longer than any of us have been alive, but local government would get out of hand and property tax rates would get too high. The state would come in and try to do something to make property tax rates reasonable again, and before you know it, local government had gotten out of hand again. So that's why we have the tax caps, because local government did not behave across the state.
A lot of those were driven by capital projects for schools, if I remember correctly, in 10, 15 years ago, where you'd have a lot of new buildings going up, and then that drove the local property taxes up, and then people raised their hands and said, I can't take it. And that's where we got the 1%, 2%, and 3% caps.
Yeah, in Anderson, in fact, we had a declining student population in Anderson Community Schools, and they had a closed junior high, and then built a new elementary right beside it. I mean, it's wasted a lot of money on bricks and mortar that they didn't need to.
Dave had his hand up.
Well, the actual money that is spent per student is less in Indiana than it has been in a long time. And if you actually look it up, all 4 bordering states, we are 4th or 5th. All bordering states spend more money per student. I think they're $4 per student. We're like $42 per student. So we're actually spending less and less per student. And so we're not funding the students. And I'm not saying the property caps are all the problem, all the issues, but you have to have proper funding for stuff. When the last 10 years your schools have not progressed, your roads have not progressed, there's been no job creation. The Indiana growth from August of 17 to August of 18 was 1.2%, which was 9th lowest in the United States, and non-agricultural growth was 10th lowest. So you're not getting job creation in Indiana. You're not getting roads paved. You're not getting your schools. You're not taking care of your teachers. This has been going on for 10 years.
Did you not notice there's a 3rd lane on I-69 now?
Yeah. We've had those, and this goes right back to toll roads. We spent $3.8 billion. The Alice State Spanish-Australian company went bankrupt, hired by another company. That was supposed to pay for all these roads. During the election year with Mr. Pence, there was over 300 deteriorated bridges in Indiana. You should never have 300 deteriorated bridges in Indiana. Those should be budgeted every year. So many roads should be budgeted every single year, and so many bridges should be done every single year, and the proper funding for teachers and education should be there every single year. And when it ain't getting done, and it's not getting done, and the teachers and the hardworking middle class people are paying for it, the difference, the 1%, is getting further and further away from the middle class. People are working 2 full-time jobs, and are still on welfare, and they don't have money, and they're not getting the educations that they deserve. And it's a lot more. It's not getting fixed. It's getting further and further away.
All right.
I think since Mr. Obama left, we've seen a big growth in our economy, and I think Indiana has participated in that. To say there's no job creation is just wrong.
You talked about having a hard time finding people to getting jobs right now.
That's right.
But it's frictional in unemployment. I think there's a lot of people that don't have the skills necessarily, or aren't ready for some of the careers that are available.
Here's your problem. Here's your problem with the jobs. They're not good paying jobs. Okay, the union wage was $16 in 1973. You figure inflation in a day, it's $1.06 more an hour with a double the economy. If it was good paying jobs, you wouldn't have to have 2 40-hour work week jobs by the parents. Each parents are working 40 hours working a week and still not making ends meet. They're not good paying jobs based on the economy. There's a lot of jobs at McDonald's and Panda Express and Walmart, but there's not real job creations where people can work one job, have a stay-home parent, have 2 cars in that driveway. Those are the jobs that we had here in Henry County with Chrysler and the union's jobs. We had those jobs here, and you had to educate. You didn't have any problem with education then, did we? There was no problem with education back then. You had the proper. You didn't have all these voucher schools and virtual online schools. You had proper funding. We had those jobs here, and it's getting further and further away. The corporate owners had money to buy bad politicians like a loaf of bread, and none of those tax incentives was for people here in Henry County to bring good paying jobs back to Henry County. And we've seen a deterioration. It's not got done.
All right. Well, we will leave the education topic there. We're getting
more
to
in the economy, aren't we?
Yeah, we're covered it all. We're getting to that point in the show where we probably do start to wrap up with our final thoughts.
It seems like to me, And this one's not on the show notes, but it seems like to me that all these issues could be fixed if we could just get Amazon HQ2 in Indianapolis.
You know what'll happen is if we get HQ2 here, we're going to have to add another beltway, and then you're going to have everybody's crying over, I don't want to give my property up, but I don't want traffic, but I don't want that road coming through my town.
Well, you got to be careful.
These are the problems of the next state senator.
You got to be careful when you get a big company like that, because Anderson had Delco Remy. We had 22,000 jobs at Delco Remy and Anderson, and when they went under and went out, 17% of the houses in Anderson are vacant right now.
Wow.
17% are vacant, and we've lost population since then.
You think it's just poor central planning, Greg?
I think you need to be careful when you try to get these big corporations in, because there's a chance they'll leave, and it just devastates your economy.
A lot of eggs in one basket.
Yeah,
Yes, a lot of eggs in
and
one basket.
education
Exactly.
is the key. A lot of times we talk about economic development, trying to woo companies in, but the biggest problem that we have is that the perception of Anderson Community Schools is not good. Over 1,600 students have transferred out of Anderson Community Schools to other public schools, not private or charter, other public schools. And so we need to start looking at our schools as an economic development tool. And I think they're going to improve. The competition for students will cause schools to improve.
I'll tell you what, the Anderson school system is a lot better than what their rap is. I put all four of my kids through the Anderson school system. They all went on to college and all did well. The education is there at the Anderson High School if you want to get it.
All right. Well, let's start our final thoughts segment. No, what this is if there's an issue we didn't get to that you guys want to pitch or something you think is important, share that. We're getting to the end, but Lord knows you probably need more TV, radio, and print media. So we'll give you a chance to raise some more money. Tell people where to read your platform and fill in the rest of it. We'll start with Greg and work to Dave and Mike and work our way around the room.
Well, I just like to thank everybody for listening and have the opportunity for you guys to be here. Like I said, and Mike pointed out, one of my big things is legalizing marijuana. I believe that it's going to help our young people stay away from it. The other thing that bothers me is property tax. Right now, effectively, you don't own your own home. You're just paying rent to the government. So through your property tax. So you never really own your own home. So if you fail to pay your property tax or your rent to the state, they come in and take your home. And it's just terrible. And people that have problems medically and stuff like that, they pay property tax or take their medicine, And you ought to be able to own your own home and not have it taken from you. I got a great big newspaper here.
Luckily, we're in high definition on the internet, so the visual aids will work.
Of people whose houses are being taken from them
Is that the tax sale listing?
That's the tax sale listing. It's unconscionable, and these tax sales aren't at valuation. Okay, they are sold whatever the auction price gets. So you could have a $50,000 house that sells for $10,000 at a tax sale.
Yep.
So what we're doing, the property tax is probably the cruelest tax that we put upon our citizenry. And that would be one of the things that I think that we need to be looking at as our legislature.
Do you advocate for increased user fees or sales taxes, or just a cut in government size?
There's a lot of things. One of the things that I advocated for is let's do it up front. So have like a 10% sales tax right up front. And every time the house is sold, then you'll get more income tax. About 1 in 10 houses are sold. People move about every 10 years, or I think it is 5 years, something like that. So every time the house turns over, the state would get more money from the sale of the taxes or from the sale of property. But in the end, you'll own your property. You won't be renting the property from the state.
So if people want more information on the Noland campaign, how do they follow you, get in touch, give money, all those things?
Just my Facebook page. Yeah.
All right. So we got Greg Noland tagged on our Facebook page, so you'll be there and easy to reach out to. Mr. Dave Cravens.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. If I'm blessed and if I'm elected, I will work over the party lines and work for everybody in the state of Indiana, and especially Henry County, and be accessible. I will work on job creation. I will work on our infrastructure, increasing our broadband, our waterways, the quality of water to farmers. I will work on education so our kids can dream again, innovations in the classroom, make sure our teachers are treated with dignity and respect. I will work on ridding the drugs off the street and making sure there's resources and rehabilitation for people to prevent some of the overcrowding in the jails. But I will be a resource. I'm a product of Henry County, and I will be a resource, and I will work hard for you so Henry County can work hard again to bring good working middle-class jobs back to our community. And thank you.
Dave, you mentioned the broadband. What policy do you want changed, or how do you want the state to get involved in helping to bring broadband?
Well, I think we need to increase our broadband range to farmers so they can be more competitive for small and big businesses, and so they can be more competitive with other states. I don't think the range that they get in some of the rural areas are very good, and then even some of the roads. I just think they need to be increased, and I think it allows the small businesses and big businesses to be able to compete with other states.
All right. If they want more information on your campaign?
Cravens for Senate 2018.
All right.
.com.
Very good.
Thank you.
And Mr. Gaskill.
Thank you. Facebook, elect Mike Gaskill. Webpage, MikeGaskill.net. Have to be careful that I don't.
Is there already another Mike Gaskill out there who stole it?
No. Yes, me. MikeGaskill.com is my business site.
The commercial
purposes.
purposes.
So I got to separate that from the political side. I'm as conservative as they come, and as I mentioned before, I've signed a pledge that I will not vote for a tax increase.
I said that too, and I got attacked by the Republican in my race. It's weird how that works.
Yeah. Well, I've been attacked by Republicans before too, and I am one. But I'm pro-life. I'm endorsed by Indiana Right to Life. I'm endorsed by the NRA, pro-Second Amendment. As I said earlier, constitutionalist. Education is probably one of my big issues. Road construction and growing the
Are you in
economy.
favor of orange barrels, Mike?
I'm in favor.
You're in a pro orange barrel platform.
I'm in favor of them removing those orange barrels that they had out on State Road 3. I got down here a lot easier today than.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm very transparent. I'll tell people what I'm going to do, and I stick with it. And I promised both Dave and Greg that they would see a clean campaign out of me, and got the same promise back from them. And looked like we were going to make it through without any negative. But in the last 8 days, Dave's campaign has hit me with 4 negative pieces. And when the state Republican Party wanted to hit back, I asked them twice not to do that. We've known each other a long time. Our families have known each other a long time. And I didn't want to win so bad that his parents and family would see the kind of things that his campaign put out on me. And I'm very disappointed. That's not who you are, and you're better than that, Dave.
All right. With that, I want to thank all the candidates for coming. We've really tried to make this a platform for people to come together and have conversations and get all the candidates on the ballot in the room at the same time. We've had very good success with that. Mercifully coming to the end of the campaign cycle. As a candidate and as a talk show host, I can tell you that, I'm ready for Wednesday of next week.
I'm really glad that Mike came tonight, because we've had a really big problem getting Republicans to come in here.
We've had some. We've had some. We had two of the county council people have not shown, and then I've exchanged messages with Greg Pence for 6 months or so, and his campaign has been tough to nail down. But it's not been us, and I haven't taken it personally. He's just been hiding from everybody.
I appreciate your invitation, and I think it's a great show, and I'm honored to have had the opportunity to be on it.
Yeah. Well, and we're really, no matter who we get out of this race in Henry County, I think we're going to have a state senator that's actually going to know where we are and talk to us and be involved and be a part of the community in the conversation. And I'm excited for that. Since the maps got redrawn, I think Henry County has been very, very actively served by Gene Lysing. But we really haven't seen a whole lot of Senator Eckerty down here. And I'm pretty involved in politics, and I just haven't crossed paths with him. So I'm very excited to have you guys here now, and I know that Henry County is going to be represented and have another state senator that's going to do our bidding and be an advocate for the community. So I'm happy about that. Dakota, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I got all kinds of final thoughts. This is a 2-episode week. So tomorrow we're going to be back in the studio.
We're running out of days. You're going to make me come back tomorrow already?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, we're going to be back in the studio tomorrow. Friday night, yeah. I hope you didn't have any plans, Jared.
Just this.
We will be covering County Council District Number 2. It's the only one we haven't covered that's contested so far, and that is between Chad Malacote as the Republican, and he is facing incumbent Democrat Robin Reno Fleming. They're both going to be in studio, which means that after these guys leave, I've got to take one of the microphones and the chairs and get it out of here and try to clean up Jeremiah's cable mess over here.
I am a bull in a china shop. That's what he calls me every time, and today has been torture because now I've got 1/5 less space than I normally do, and nothing's where it belongs. So, as I told Dakota at the top of the show, I will complain for a month over any change we make at any time.
Well, that's how it goes.
That's the nature of our relationship.
But yeah, once again, thank you guys for coming. Really do appreciate it. We've put a lot of work into our platform, and I think that it's serving the voters of Henry County pretty well. Also, just need to plug Wyland's Flowers in Newcastle. Once again, they're sponsoring the event. You can find them at wylandsflowers.net. They are also a .net, just like Mike Gaskill. You can call them at 765-529-6303. Tell them that we sent you. And, of course, the Henry County League of Women Voters, just so everyone remembers, you don't have to be a woman to join the League of Women Voters. They will accept anyone, and they're trying to do some really good work.
They won't accept dogs, but they will accept gentlemen.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's just anybody. You need,
Oh.
Dogs, cats, llamas. No,
anybody.
You got to be human.
As long as you have a driver's license and can get people to the polls, I think that they're going to take you.
All right. Well, I'm excited they've been a part of the
they've been doing
community.
a lot of good work in Henry County to try to get voters informed, get people involved in the process. So we appreciate them as well. And, of course, patreon.com/Boss Hog of Liberty. And that is how we can keep this show running. So thank you all for joining us tonight. And once again, thank you to the candidates.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys for running. It's
See you guys.
it is no fun when we have nobody running in these races. It's not good for the voters either. Our state rep race, Tom Saunders doesn't have an opponent this time. Tom's a good guy, but I always think that having a challenge gives us a better legislature. So thank each of you for doing that. We'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Thank you for listening to the Boss Hog of Liberty, which is part of the We Are Libertarians network. I am Chris Spangle, and I am the founder of this network, and I invite you to listen to all of our shows, which you can find at wearelibertarians.com or by searching for these in your podcatcher. The flagship show is the We Are Libertarians podcast, where we apply libertarian principles to current events. The Brian Nichols Show is a conversation amongst Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, as they talk about what is happening in the news. And we have many other podcasts like The Chris Spangle Show, Upward, The Cost, Raw Audio Politics, Miranda's World, and Tad Talk, which is quite a ride. So check all of these out. Go to wearelibertarians.com and you can check out all of our great podcasts. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Get our other shows at wearelibertarians.com.